Okay, so are you looking to read more? I'm going to be breaking down in this video the books that made me into a reader. I've sort of always been a reader, but I would say in my early 20s, I really committed to it and I became a more voracious reader. I started reading more books every single year. It's always been something that interested me, but these books helped me get hooked, helped me really establish a good routine and made sure that I always had some sort of book in my backlog. I want to help you build that backlog in this video by breaking down the books that really pulled me in as a reader. And I'd like to do it by recommending some books that maybe aren't typically recommended on here, or not the Red Risings or the Dungeon Crawler Carls of the world. These are some older books, some nonfiction and some fiction, a mix of both. These are 26 books, I think, in total, and my hope is that you'll find something in this mix that will allow you to better turn yourself into a reader this year and going forward. So the first book on my list here is City of Thieves by David Benioff. Now, you may recognize David Benioff's name from Game of Thrones. He is one half of DB and Weiss. He is the DB, the proverbial DB. You may have seen him giving oftentimes bizarre interviews following the final season of Game of Thrones. You may be one of those people who said, "I'll never read anything that those damn monsters do after ruining my Swords and Dragons TV show." Okay, well, if you're one of those, maybe this book isn't for you. But if you're like, a normal person, then maybe you want to find a good book. And this book, City of Thieves, is an incredible book. It's about two young men in war-torn Leningrad who are sent on an absurd mission of sorts. They need to find a dozen eggs during a siege where there are no supplies coming into Leningrad. It's brutal, hilarious at times, and the writing is incredible in this one. There are some passages that I still think about. I think I read this book when I was like 15 years old. I reread it a few years ago, and it still holds up. There are so many great moments within this novel. There's a reason why you see Benioff went on to write another novel that I also love. I'm not going to get into it here. There's a movie made of it that is another incredible work with a lot of really famous actors. This to me is the one that should be made into a movie. It feels like a movie and it moves so well. I find it difficult. Anyone I've ever recommended it to loves this book. So check out City of Thieves if you have the time and you are, a non-Game of Thrones miserable weirdo who thinks David Benioff can't write just because it didn't land the plane on your Swords and Dragons show. Next up, Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. Dan Brown has become kind of a punchline in recent years, and it's because a lot of his books are very samey, but Angels and Demons is an incredible book. It's a book about a cryptologist, Robert Langdon, the character who is also super relevant in the Da Vinci Code. The Da Vinci Code is kind of the book that blew up Dan Brown as an author, but Angels and Demons was written, I think, beforehand. It's the first book in this Robert Langdon series. He's a cryptologist. He understands sort of cryptographs and puzzles and unwinds these sort of mysteries across various famous, iconic luxury European locales over the course of this book series. But Angels and Demons is all about the assassination of a pope and the mystery of who killed this pope. It's all about a secret society attempting to destroy the Vatican. It's very fast-paced. It's very twisty in terms of the storytelling. The mystery at the core is really great. The characters are really great. The puzzle solving is also really fun. It's a thriller in the most pure sense of the word. You can rip through this book in a day if you really sit down. It's one of those really quick, easy reads that I always recommend to people, and people always walk away, I think, enjoying it. Next up, Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. Crichton is a legend. This guy was a doctor, a heart doctor. Did you know that? No. Well, he also invented one of the most iconic pieces of IP of the last 40 years in Jurassic Park. You may have seen the movie. You probably did if you're watching this video. Scientist clones dinosaurs. Corporate hubris is a play. Nature does not like the cloning of dinosaurs. All of a sudden, people are getting murdered in the dinosaur theme park. You know the story. The book that inspired the movie is darn good. The sort of episodic way the story is told in this book is great. Crichton is a very talented writer, and this book to me is just magic. It's lightning in a bottle. It's another one that reads really quickly, and you'll immediately be pulled right back into it. It has some noted differences from the movie, so if you are a fan, I just wanted to always sort of check out what the novelization or the original novel is like. This is it. Check it out. It's well worth your time, and you can rip through this one. Okay, so I gave you two great fiction reads. Now I want to give you a couple of nonfiction reads, and then we'll sort of switch on and off throughout this. Right now I want to talk about Outliers, the Malcolm Gladwell nonfiction book, airport fiction book most people know about. They know about it because it made this idea of the 10,000 hour rule. This book is about the people who do special things and how success isn't just about hustle, it's about sort of practice and opportunity and where you were born or when you were born. And Gladwell is kind of undermining the myth of lone genius and all about figuring out sort of what builds an outlier of a person. And you know what? This book has not aged particularly well in a lot of ways. I think that certain elements of this, certain stories have turned out to be not good. Like the people who he was talking about, the outliers, ended up being somewhere between charlatans and morons, and that's okay. Overall, that's fine, right? Because this book is still an important piece of pop psychology that is well worth anyone's time. I've never recommended this to anyone and had them tell me, you know, that book really wasn't very good at all, because there is some sort of kernel of truth, I think, to a lot of what Gladwell's playing with in these books, and there's a reason why they've stuck around for so long and remained popular all that time. This book really helped pull me into the world of pop psychology. It wasn't until years later that I realized a lot of those books were terrible and nonsensical, but it's a good entry point if you are looking to sort of dive into some quicker nonfiction reads that don't seem so daunting. Next up, Educated by Tara Westover. Now, Educated is a memoir about a woman who was raised in an isolated survivalist family in rural Idaho and who doesn't step into a classroom until she's 17. She goes on to earn her PhD from Cambridge, and the book itself is really about education and the role that education plays and played in her life. It's about people who are not offered the opportunity of education and about breaking away from the people who raised you and deciding the importance of education. I think this is one of the best books I've ever read. I don't say that lightly. I'm a big advocate for education. I've had education. I've been lucky enough to be afforded the opportunity to education in my life. And I think this book really underscores just how important that is, especially for people who may sort of take for granted what education means or dismiss the idea of education. Educated really focuses on how important it is to do what you can to put yourself in a position to learn and what it looks like to not be afforded the opportunities to learn on a mass scale, on a requisite level, to be at grade point level or whatever the case may be, to be caught up with your peers, and the real practical, real significant challenges that brings with you as you enter into adulthood. An incredible memoir. I'm not a big memoir guy. This one just knocks it out of the park. It is an incredible piece of writing. Next up, The Road to Jonestown. I love cults. Jonestown, Kool-Aid, you've probably heard the story. This book is a chilling deep dive into Jim Jones and the People's Temple. It's all about sort of how Jim Jones got there, the people he targeted to become members of his cult. It talks a lot about who was actually involved beyond Jim Jones, not just him. How they go from sort of doing these small organizational meetings in Indianapolis or in California. It talks about how Jim Jones became sort of this sexual person who was all of a sudden having relationships with both the husband and the wife behind closed doors, taking people's wives. And it sort of reads like a slow burn horror story, because by the time you get to the end, when you realize just how terribly this is going to work out for all the people involved, even the people who are generally innocent, the people who are sort of following along and believe earnestly in what Jones is preaching. It is very tragic, but it is an incredible view into why people sort of need to believe in something and the human condition and the fragility of people in terms of feeling that they need to be a part of a larger group, even when it's counterintuitive, even when it's not in their best interest. Great book. Check out The Road to Jonestown. Another piece of nonfiction here. American Kingpin by Nick Bilton. Nick Bilton wrote another great book about the making of Twitter, if you want to check that one out as well. But for me, American Kingpin is another one of the best nonfiction books I've ever read. It's about the rise and fall of Ross Ulbricht, the guy who created the Silk Road, the online illegal drug marketplace where you could basically buy anything online, drugs, guns, anything. And it was sort of this libertarian dream where this young person who was like a disillusioned youth who tried to get on reality TV a bunch, he ends up creating this massively successful, massively financially successful thing where people are selling people, drugs, guns, and becomes the target of the FBI. And it's about the FBI tracking him down, the methods they did to do that, the lengths to which he went to protect himself when things started going sideways, and just a generally incredible view into what an investigation into a crime that could basically only happen in the age of the internet looks like. This is sort of at the forefront of modern life, modern technology, and the relationship we have between illegal conduct, drugs, prostitution, all that, and what that has to do with how the internet allowed the great propagation of those things, and who's responsible when suddenly you can get all those things very easily online. Next up, Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. Another nonfiction book here. It's set during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. To me, this is one of the best nonfiction books I've ever read as well. Another one where if you start it, you can't put it down. You just cannot put it down. This book centers around a mother who disappears. It is expertly crafted. It's the book's about a mother who disappears. The IRA may or may not have taken her as a response to certain things that were rumored about her tattling to the authorities. It's about the troubles, the Northern Irish, the Irish in relation to the UK. It's about bombings. It's about two young women who are radicalized and they start robbing banks and they start laying bombs and explosives and things happen. People are going to prison. Crazy stuff is going on the entirety of this book. They are writing their life stories. This guy, the author, Patrick Raddenkeefe, great writer, he makes it feel like you're reading a movie, essentially. They make this into an FX show a few years later. Incredible FX show. Worth checking out completely. So read the book, check out the show. This book is amazing. I don't know how anyone could not enjoy it. This book is amazing. Stop wasting your time listening to me. Go read it right now. Okay, so let's swing back to the fiction world for a little bit. I want to give you 3 books, quick succession here. 3 of the most popular books I will probably recommend ever. And there's a reason that these books are very popular. I'll start with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. You may have seen the movie, you may have heard of this one. It's about a brilliant journalist and this hacker woman who work together to solve a decades-old disappearance inside a wealthy Swedish family. It's very dark. It feels like a David Fincher movie. Ironic because it became a David Fincher movie. But even before that, it felt like a David Fincher movie. It's just very brutal. It's very violent. There's a lot of sort of bleak humor in it at times. This is the first book in a series of books, the Millennium Trilogy, that was written by Stieg Larsson before he passed away. Incredible book. And again, this was an international bestseller for years. I'm sure it's still an international bestseller, and with good reason. It reads so quickly. It is one of those grab you by the scruff of your neck thrillers that you just feel like you're along for the ride the entire time. So I highly recommend this one. Next up, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. We're talking about books that get us into reading, that really made me a reader. This book is one of those. If you're someone who doesn't read a lot, I struggle to think how you could put this book down. It's another one of those books that just grips you from the moment you dive into it. If you don't know what it's about, you haven't seen the movies, you don't know Jennifer Lawrence and the other guys who were in it who became famous as well. It's about a dystopian future where teens are forced to fight to the death for entertainment. Katniss Everdeen, she volunteers to save her sister, and then she has to go into this deadly sort of battlefield world to fight for her life. Banger of a book. Banger of a book series. The second book may be better than the first book, Catching Fire. The third book is not as good, but it has some crazy stuff going on. I have some opinions about that book as well. Overall, I think this is an incredible entry point into reading. It is one that, again, quick read. If you wanted to sit down for a weekend, you can crank through this first book because it's sort of designed as an entry point into the series, into the world of Katniss Everdeen of The Hunger Games. There's now been 2 spin-off books, which I both think are also pretty good. One of them I think is excellent. The other one I think is okay and sort of good in its own way. And one thing that I think is sort of underrated with all this, if you're reading a part of a series, it allows you to build a backlog automatically. You're like jumping into this, and you can crank 3 books out. You're like, wow, I just read 3 books, and I love that series. That is really fun to me. I think that's really fun to a lot of people. I think it's cool to be a part of something like that. So if you are looking for something, check out The Hunger Games. Maybe you've seen the movies. It adds something to them to read through these books. Now, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Harry Potter Book 4. Why am I recommending Harry Potter Book 4? Everyone's read Harry Potter. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you think, oh, those are for kids. Those are kind of wizard books. And I will concede. The first Harry Potter book is very much a kid's book. The second Harry Potter book is sort of moving in a darker direction. The third Harry Potter book is, I guess, as close to an adult children's book as you can have. The fourth Harry Potter book, the Goblet of Fire, is to me one of the greatest mystery novels ever written, and is condensed into this world, this magic book Harry Potter series. It's difficult to talk about J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter without acknowledging the fact that J.K. Rowling has completely gone off the deep end. You can separate the fact that many of the people who write the books that you love are not good people and are in fact wackadoos. And a lot of times when you make $1 billion, you don't end up being normal. I mean, that's just the reality of the world. And certainly that seems to be in play here. Separate all of that. This book is incredible. It's about the Triwizard Tournament. It's about a mystery that starts it off, grips you by the collar again from the jump in a scene in a graveyard. It's Harry Potter's 4th year. It's a sporting event that brings together all these different universities. It expands the world of Harry Potter in an incredible way. Even if you've never read the other books, if you have a general sense of the world, read this book. It's a really great mystery. Pretty sure if you read this book and you do enjoy it, because I don't know anyone who couldn't, that you're generally going to want to read the next one and the next one. And for the most part, this series is straight bangers from 4 on out. And I think they're pretty adult level bangers. They're not John Steinbeck, the greatest novel ever written, but to me they're a lot more enjoyable in a lot of ways. They're not as deep as those books, but there are a lot of deep, interesting ideas. And a lot of that starts with this fourth Goblet of Fire book. So check out Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, whether you're a Harry Potter fan or not. This may rope you into the series, make you want to watch the movies. Again, it's one of the best works of fiction ever written, in my opinion. Next up, Born Standing Up by Steve Martin. This is another memoir about becoming the biggest stand-up comedian in the world and then sort of walking away at the height of his fame. It's all about Steve Martin's rise from playing sort of empty rooms and open mics to selling out stadiums. And it's very introspective. It's very interesting. If you're somebody who's interested in the world of comedy, in the world of entertainment, in the world of sort of artists and how they work and how they sort of sharpen themselves and how they can rise to the top and what that feels like, this is as good of an insight as any. Reading Martin's thoughts as he reflects on being the most famous comedian in the world for a brief period and what that ultimately meant for him and ultimately how he regarded that is very interesting. It's fascinating. And Martin is a very talented writer. He's very funny. Another book that you can read very quickly. It just pulls you in. If you like Steve Martin even vaguely, I highly recommend checking out Born Standing Up. This one is for all those football fans out there. I am a huge football guy. And Friday Night Lights is not only the inspiration for an incredible television series, but an incredible movie. And listen, the book does it all as well. This book is about a journalist who moves his entire family down to East Texas to follow a high school football team in the 80s. It's about a town where it pins its entire identity, its hope, its dreams, its economy on high school football, on teenage boys playing under lights on Friday nights. It's raw, it's emotional, it feels like a microcosm of the world. It feels like a microcosm of American culture in a lot of ways. This is as American as it gets. It's East Texas, it's oil, it's poverty, it's the relationship between all of those things and American identity and excellence and football. And I adore this book. I adore the world that it opened up to us across general media, from the movies to the television show. Go check out Friday Night Lights, the book. If you have a passing interest in football, if you like the movie, if you like the show, go read the book itself. It's an incredible work of nonfiction. Friday Night Lights is for you. Next up, George Washington's Secret Six. This is the story of the Culper spy ring, the civilian spy ring who helped George Washington outmaneuver the British during the Revolutionary War. It's a nonfiction sort of historical book that reads like a spy novel because a lot of what went on with the Culper ring was very spy novel adjacent. It is thrilling at times. Another one of these nonfiction books that reads like a novel. It's so fast-paced. It's a thriller. They made it into a television show called Turn on AMC that ran a bunch of seasons. One of my favorite things is recommending books that have an adaptation because it allows you to dive into it afterwards. And generally, I think you'll find the books are better than the movie. People who are making these movies and television shows, a lot of times they read these books, they figure out, they see just how gripping the books themselves are, and that's where they pull these stories from. And George Washington's Secret Six is absolutely one of those stories. If you have an interest in history, an interest in spies, this is the book for you. Next up, more nonfiction. So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson. I love Jon Ronson's book. He's a British guy. He's got great big ideas. He does a podcast now that I don't really dive into as much, but this book is sort of a look into public shaming and what it means to be public shamed in the age of social media. He investigates viral scandals and asks sort of, when the internet turns on someone, is there any way back? What comes after that? What happens to these people who are canceled online, quote unquote? It's a really interesting exploration into that and what it means to sort of brutally, unceremoniously chop someone off and say, you know, that person's done. Because ultimately when this kind of happens, people they don't die. They sort of exist in this non-internet reality where their everyday lives are changed. And it's a fascinating exploration into that and what that means in the context of existing in 2026. This book's a little bit older than that, but nonetheless, the truth of a lot of the lessons still apply here. Okay, next up, It by Stephen King. This has been turned into a movie, a television show. It's about a group of children living in small-town America who discover this ancient evil in the form of a clown who is hunting them and murdering children in their town. Damn, this book is good. This is a generation-spanning novel. To me, it's Stephen King's greatest work. I know that people generally point to some of his other stuff, but I view it as a crowning achievement. Nobody writes about America better than Stephen King. And I know everyone loves John Steinbeck and his ability to sort of capture the American essence. But there's something about small town America that Stephen King really nails in this book, and the relationship these children have with this sort of idyllic world that they're existing in, and the perversity of seeing this clown crash that world and literally start biting children's limbs off. Banger of a book, wild ending. If you don't know what happens in this book at the end, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's not the same as the movies or the show. They could not get away with that. The ending is deranged. My understanding is that, Stephen King was at a different stage of his life. Man was, you can look into it. He was living in a different area during the writing of this book, and that may have been a role in how this book ultimately ends. But definitely check out it. It's a massive book, but if you have the time to dive in, maybe not as your first foray into reading, but if you feel you're up for it, go for the 1,000-pager. It's well worth it. Next up, American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Speaking of authors who are not apparently good people, Neil Gaiman recently canceled, publicly shamed, if you will. This book is amazing. It's a novel. It's about old gods and new gods, and it's a world of myth where gods are physical beings who exist on Earth, and how their power sort of changes throughout time, and how Thor and all these older gods, how their power has diminished over the course of time as they've moved out of the monoculture and become sort of more these fringe gods in the world. It's a road trip fantasy about a gentleman who is on death row and how his life has sort of changed with all this. It's about folklore and existence and weird stuff wrapped in all that in one big story here. Next up, World War Z by Max Brooks. Different book than a lot of the other books on here, another novel. It's told in sort of this interview style format. An incredible listen if you have Audible or want to check out an audiobook, because it's told amongst different voice actors, and the way they portray the stories is also really well done. I read this way back when I was still in middle high school, and it's one of those books that really just pulls you in. The story itself is really gripping. It's about the world falling to zombies, but it's told in this sort of hyper-realistic, gripping way, almost documentarian way, in the way that people are recounting what happened and sort of the fall of civilization. And to me, in most post-apocalyptic fiction, that's what is the most interesting thing, how the world falls. A lot of stories sort of falter in the aftermath, like when people are rebuilding society, because it's not that interesting to see people invent the Constitution. Sorry, Hamilton. But the book itself is about less so monsters, more so how people respond to monsters, governmental failings, the hubris of man and thinking they can overcome anything, and what that ultimately leads to across sort of geopolitical borders. Great book. Check it out. Back to the world of nonfiction. American Heiress by Jeffrey Toobin. As I'm going through this list, I'm starting to realize I am naming a lot of disgraced authors on this list. Jeffrey Toobin, he's had a tough couple years. Again, you can look that one up as well. I'm not going to dive too deep into it. But he's had a tough couple years. But man, he wrote a heck of a book here. He wrote another great book about O.J. Simpson that I'm not going to recommend here, but another very great one if you're looking to check it out. But this book that I'm recommending is American Heiress by Jeffrey Toobin. It's a bizarre story of Patty Hearst, a famous kidnapping victim, heiress, who was an heiress of this multi-million-dollar fortune, and she was radicalized by the people who kidnapped her and subsequently went on the run, and the media circus and spectacle of it all, and how the media sort of glommed onto this millionaire heiress turning into this revolutionary, and the psychological drama of it all. Incredibly interesting story. You may have vaguely heard of who Patty Hearst is, but it feels so separated from our society now. It's been almost 100 years ago. So it's a great peek into what the media, sort of what that story was like. Learn about Patty Hearst, and it's told in a very compelling way. Next up, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I thought about this, and this may be the first nonfiction book I ever read. It's a true crime book, true crime nonfiction story that is written like a novel. It's about a family in Kansas who is brutally murdered, unfortunately, by two characters, sort of roadside people who are not good people. They murder this family. And the author, Truman Capote, he goes to Kansas, he befriends the two gentlemen who are on death row for this killing. He tries to get, as best he can, the full story of the murder of this family. And for me, this is like an instructive text in the world of true crime. I read it again a few years ago. I read it when I was young, and it was, again, probably the first true crime thing I ever really checked out. And I read it again recently, and when I did, I felt like it still really captures a lot of what made it so special. This book is like, I want to say, almost 60 years old at this point, and it's still probably the best piece of true crime nonfiction ever written. So that should tell you why it has stood the test of time. It reads so quickly. If you like true crime, if you like podcasts, whatever the case may be, this book is the forefather of all of that. check out In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Okay, the last nonfiction book I'm going to recommend here is another John Ronson book. It is The Psychopath Test. It's about the science and maybe pseudoscience of diagnosing someone as a psychopath. He really, I don't want to say criticizes, but he explores the idea of like what is making people feel that they can diagnose someone a psychopath, and the overdiagnosis and underdiagnosis of the term, and whether it actually fits to the majority of people who are being diagnosed as psychopaths. Very interesting book. Another classic to me of nonfiction. Reads very quickly, well worth your time. I think Ronson does the audiobook as well, if you want to check that out. But this is one of those sort of airport reads, I would say, where if you saw it in an airport, you grabbed it, you might finish it on the flight if you have a longer flight. This is a perfect book for that because it is an incredible thesis, an incredible idea, and a lot of the case studies, sort of stories that he puts into this one are just too crazy to even believe. We have 3 books left on this list. The first of them is George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. The book that started it all, a television universe, the most successful television series of all time, lots of, I guess, merchandise, billions of dollars worth of intellectual property, all come from this book. It's about noble houses and fighting, and it feels like sort of a war allegory at times. There's so much to unpack in these books that is not included within the television show. And as someone who loved the television show and maybe isn't as critical of the ending of the show as other people might be, I certainly think that it's well worth your time, even if you've soured to the world, to just get a more full view of what Martin viewed or sort of meant to build in this world. The world building is amazing. Next up, Shogun by James Clavell. This is a story about an English pilot who is shepherding a ship that crashes onto Japanese shores. It's a Japanese samurai novel. It is amazing. It is an incredible view into the world of feudal Japan, the rival shogunates, the rival factions, the rival leaders. An incredible novel, a behemoth, another long read. But if you're somebody who kind of likes samurai action, maybe you like anime in some capacity, maybe you watch Dragon Ball Z, there's a lot to mine here. There's a lot of great action sequences, a lot of great stories. Okay, that does it for us. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for more of these videos. Be sure to leave your recommendations in the comments below. What are you reading? What made you into a reader? Until later, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye now.